In this section, we're going to be looking at calculating the mean and standard deviations for discrete probability distribution. We'll be using our formulas here on the right. So we have our formula for our mean, and we also have our formula for our standard deviation. So we're going to work with a sample problem, going through and using these formulas and how to set them up to get the values you need for your homeworks and the exams. These are going to be really important parameters as we're going to be drawing upon this ability to calculate these values later on in the semester when we're looking at chapter 8 and beyond. So here, let's look up exercise number 8 on page 207. We're going to work with the probability distribution below, and we're going to specify both the mean and the standard deviation using our formulas here on the right. So the first part to get started when you have a new formula is identify what parts we already know from the formula. We can see that we have our x and our p of x in our table already, so the only thing we need to do to get our mu is to multiply them together and sum the total. So you should be setting up a table similar to what we've done before. You should get something that looks like this. So you've got your x, your p of x columns, and then you need to do your your x times p of x, and then sum those up to get your mu. Pause the video here for a moment, go through and do those calculations, and then when you've completed them, turn the video back on to proceed and check your work. You should have gotten a value somewhere like this, so 0.403 for your mu. Now, remember our rounding rule for calculating the mean is that we move it one specificity level beyond what is actually reported. So this, the original value specificity plus one more decimal point beyond that. So we round our mean of 0.403 to 0.4. Be sure you do this before you go on and calculate the rest of your formula, as both the homeworks and the exams give you the correct answer for mu squared if you're using the rounded mu. Okay, so we got one part done. We got a couple more steps to go. So the next we have to do is calculate our standard deviation, and we have our p of x and our mu. So now we need to calculate our x squared, and we need to calculate our mu squared, and we need to calculate our x squared times p of x. So we're going to need to extend the columns in that chart we've already started to finish this calculations. So you should get something that looks like this. So here's the standard deviation formula we can see there, which specifies we need x squared times p of x, and we need to sum that up, and then we're going to plug that into our formula, subtract mu squared from it, and take the standard deviation. So in your chart, you should have the next two columns should be x squared, and then x squared times p of x. So pause the video here, go through and make those calculations for the columns, and then sum your x squared times p of x at the bottom. Turn the video back on, and we'll check your work together. Okay, now notice my mistake I made here. This is a really common and easy mistake to make. I multiplied my 4 times 0.1 rather than times the 0.05 because it's just very easy. It's the column right next to it. This is a really easy mistake to make, especially if you are working quickly. So if you're trying to rush through your problems, you're likely to make this error. A good way to prevent making this mistake is to cover up the column for x times p of x so you simply can't see it. Literally, sometimes just cut a small piece of paper that you can use to cover it. So you apply it like that. That prevents you from making that calculation mistake. Now, let's go through and look at the corrected numbers and move from there. So here we see our corrected numbers, and we've got 0.539 for our sum of x squared times p of x. You can see we're going to take that and plug that into our standard deviation formula, and also we're going to use our mu down into our standard deviation problem. Now remember, we're plugging it in, we're going to use the rounded version, so that's not what's represented here exactly, but remember you're going to round your mu. So if you take those numbers and pause here, plug them into that formula and calculate it over, then when you've completed that, turn the video back on and we'll check our work together. Right, you should have got something like this. So when you're looking for your standard deviation, you should have gotten 0.6156. Remember, our rounding rule applies here as well for using one decimal point beyond the specificity. So that means our standard deviation is going to be 0.6. So now that we've gone through problem number 8, I want you to stop the video here, go through and solve problem number 12 yourself, which is a very similar problem. Go through each of the steps to get your mean and your standard deviation. if you need to go back and rewatch this video for following through the steps on your own. And then when you finish that, turn the video back on from here and you can check your work. When I'm not doing the calculations for these, they're going to follow exactly the same pattern that we just did for problem number 8. Right, and you should have gotten a mean of 4.6 and a standard deviation of 1.1. So this concludes this tutorial. Next up, we have looking at practice works with discrete probability distributions. We have 2 practice problems. We're going to do practice problem 1 and practice problem 2.